This episode was originally recorded just a few days before January 2020. As such, we weren't aware of the changes about to be made on International Nerf Day. So look out for another podcast after we get accustomed to the new standard landscape. Until then, enjoy the show. Well, hello and welcome to, I think technically this is episode number 15, but I am joined by Sawyer. Hello, Sawyer.
Hello, Mary Crimbo.
And we're also joined by Dictator.
Hello, everyone.
We'll just get right into it. What were your thoughts on the Crimbo, Sawyer?
Pretty good setup this year. I generally like the underwater mechanic, especially because that was sort of hinted at right at the beginning of the month. There weren't really any major surprises. It would have been kind of nice to get maybe a slightly better reward. The main reward that we got is a 10% item buff skill that I think is pretty high MP cost. Isn't it like 50 MP or something?
Yeah, 54 10 turns.
Right. Not a fantastic boost, but marginally useful. And then basically a bunch of rare items that I think most people have been spending the last few weeks farming, none of which are really game-breaking or necessarily Ascension relevant, but they're kind of fun. There's a new staff and some monster level sources and stuff like that. So nothing super impressive. I think people kind of like the storyline of not knowing if the Dolphins were bad or good, or then finding out they were bad, or I don't really even remember where that got left off.
That's exactly right. The Dolphins just got left off of last year.
I like the shout out in the dummy text towards that.
Yeah, that was amusing. The skill book is the main attraction for Ascension relevance, and we're going to need all the item drop that we can get next year because things are looking a bit sparse.
Yep.
And then we had 3 challenge paths this year. We had Dark Gift, 2 Crazy Random Summer, and Kingdom of Exploathing. I got a chance to play all of them.
Yeah, I think Lyft, you got 4 gold stars out of a potential 6, so you did pretty well in these challenge paths.
I didn't hardly try the challenge paths last year at all. It was just focused on standard and learning the basics, so it was fun to branch out this year. What were your favorite paths that you got to play, Dictator?
Well, the only one I got to play seriously happened to be Exploathing. I'm generally not a big fan of avatar paths, so I kind of skipped Dark Gift. And for 2 CRS, I wanted to play it, but then with the holiday and all, I managed to jump into a run and then I got distracted again, and so that run ended up lasting like 10 days. And after that, I kind of couldn't be bothered to figure out the entire new meta for just the last week. So I ended up kind of ignoring that one.
Yeah, that was a path you definitely need to start like a month in advance.
Yeah, you couldn't just like throw your general game knowledge at it anymore because all your general game knowledge was valid.
And that's what made it rewarding. Like, so while your character didn't level up, accumulate skill points on the path, I felt every time I played it, I was still learning something in 2 Crazy Random Summer. Every Ascension, just a new potion or effect or a way to route things more smoothly. And it was sad because I found the what's the potion that you can craft that's like +5 monster level? Prejudice. I have no idea how I missed that, but that was like plus 200% muscle. I was like towering strength.
Ooh.
And I noticed it the day after the season closed. Still learning even after it ended.
Yeah. By now, that's probably no longer true.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask is, didn't the seeds get mixed up at least once, if not twice, since the path was active?
I think the effects got mixed up once since the path ended.
I just know during the summer, pretty much everybody settled into like 1 or 2 distinct setups. I already forget what they were, but there was the one that gave basically a giant stat buff and a giant item buff pretty much right off the bat.
I think it was going Vole into Possum as a seal clubber.
Sounds right.
There was no reason to use another seed combination. I mean, it was overwhelming enough as it is, so you just wanted to pick one that had stone wool, good item, and then just learn that one seed.
I thought it would have been kind of cool if there was a little more variety to that, but that's just not the way that the randomness worked. It just happened to tack on 7 or 8 different sources of item drops and several huge stat buffs all in that one, or all in both of those seeds. So pretty much everybody fell into that. I don't know if you were trying to do one now, it would be a huge nightmare to do one.
I think we'd be back at ground zero and trying to rebuild just our data.
Yeah, probably not a fun path to do in unrestricted play to begin with, and definitely not now that all the seeds have gotten mixed up.
Yeah, I was a little worried about that, but because of the way the seeding for the effects works, based on like how many possible effects there are in the pool, it's kind of hard to keep it being supportable if we decide that an alt effect needs to no longer be in that pool. Because it's the same as, during the path was already figured out, it's the same as the effect you can get from like the hookah.
Two Crazy Random Summer was one of those paths where if you were really into it, you enjoyed it a lot, but it was very intimidating. Just the daunting list of looking at, the 54 different combinations of everything. I think we can all agree that Dark Gift was a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, and it was hard to make something that was gonna like be that popular in the first place.
Sawyer, did you get to play Dark Gift?
Yeah, I played Dark Gift quite a bit. I know when it was out, both for active players like speed ascenders and casual players, it was an extremely popular path. I liked it overall. I think if I had a little more time, I probably would have gotten into 2CRS and maybe enjoyed that a little more. Like you, I remember sort of discovering on the last couple days of the path that there were sources of item drops or sources of buffs that I had missed. I also I like Kingdom of Exploathing, and one of the reasons why is I kind of like the formula of taking standard and just adding or removing a few mechanisms, even though that doesn't seem like to a lot of players like it's a big change or anything. I think that's a good overall formula for making a path, because basically you can sort of train yourself on standard of how to use certain familiars and how to use resources, and then the focus of the path is just adjusting for a few different quests or a few different areas. So I actually really like Kingdom of Exploathing. I thought it was a pretty good path.
I think someone described Kingdom of Exploathing to me. It's amazing how many things you can take out of standard and have it still function.
I don't know who I was talking to about this. Kingdom of Exploathing, one of the things that I really like about it is it took out like 3 or 4 different sources that all had high turn variance. So it took out airship, it took out the war start itself for the level 12 quest. Oh, it took out a lot of the non-combats for the forest. And if you play standard a lot, you'll see people constantly complaining about like, oh, I got screwed on RNG in the forest or an airship. And so that was, I don't know if that was intentional or not, but that was kind of a nice touch, is that they purposefully got rid of several major turn sync areas. So in general, that makes ascending a little more fun when you don't have to worry about those.
Yeah, a little less variance. You still can get stuck in first floor of Spooky Raven Manor.
Or the friars.
The friars. Our spleen was hotly contested because of the particular war in Exploding and
Yeah.
how you could use sneak assault to...
Oh, yeah.
I was a little sad that the war was such a good sneaky assault target, because that instantly made it the sneaky assault target of choice, and that made it dominate like your routing plans as soon as the item got released and it became an option, which is nice for making the item really shine, but it does not really promote variety of runs or something.
The variety is just how many sneak assaults were used on the battlefield.
That was sort of an interesting little math problem, too, of just figuring out exactly how many turns it would save in battlefield versus a 95 or 90% or 85% non-combat zone.
Our spleen got to a point where you could safely say that each spleen saved a turn.
A little less than that, I think, but it was getting really close, yes. I tossed out all but 1 or 2 nightmare fuels. And those were more because I had uneven numbers that I needed to fit up than that I really needed them.
I don't even know if I realized it in Kingdom of Exploding, but I realized it in Standard that like trying to get a Mojo filter is sensible again. That used to be a thing way back when people took Astral Energy drinks, is they really wanted a Mojo filter. And I think in my last run, I was in the Oasis and was had a spare yellow ray or something and realized, oh, this actually saves a turn now, thanks to the pill finder and jellyfish and all the other spleen stuff.
In Exploding, I guess it would be nice, but in Standard, you don't really need the Stone Rose anymore since you have to go through the library now again. So if you pick up a Killing Jar there, don't really need to spend any turns in the Oasis.
I didn't use Mojo Filter in a hardcore run. I did use Mojo Filters in the one-day softcore and saved 2 heists and a yellow ray.
I don't remember which one it was. Just something that I got either an extra jelly or I was short a jelly or something, and my spleen wasn't quite working out, and I realized if I had 16 spleen, I could fit in an extra Sneakazole or something.
Oh, and I actually saved 2 heists and yellow rayed it for the full 3.
Ooh, that's pretty good, actually.
So an extra Sneakazole. And it was also interesting that realizing Compass didn't actually save as many turns as I just would have guessed before playing the path.
Oh, in Kingdom of Exploding, you mean? Yeah, it wasn't the average like 25 or 26 turns or something in Desert. It wasn't that bad.
I think it adds 5 desert turns plus however many turns it takes you to find that third Nazir item, whichever you weren't getting otherwise. And the 5 turns it adds are the 5 extra you have to spend before you find Nazir.
So certainly, if we compare like this year's Challenge Pass to last year's, you guys think probably better overall Challenge Pass? Last year's we would have had everyone's favorite path, Pocket Familiars, and G-Lover and Disguise to Limit.
Oh, that reminds me. I need to poke the devs about Pocket Familiars, because right now the standard window on the thing is sliding, which is dumb and it shouldn't.
Yeah, I personally think that the Challenge Pass this year were all really great in their own way. G-Lover was interesting if you really got into it, kind of like the Too Crazy Random Summer, but I really enjoyed all 3. Hopefully next year can be just as strong.
G-Lover was less crazy shakeup than Too Crazy Random Summer, but more restrictive, way more restrictive, which I personally enjoyed because it actually gave me time to do the path mostly. But I think Too Crazy Random Summer was probably better overall, though Too Crazy Random Summer really suffered for casual players from lack of the usual transparency tools, like inventory filtering didn't work properly, for example, which was kind of sad because it meant you couldn't rely on that to find the items that you would want to be wearing.
Yeah, Sawyer, what do you think?
Yeah, I think this year generally much better paths, both for bleeding edge players, ascenders, and I think for casual players. I just remember people hated Pocket Familiars, which was a good idea for a run, but just didn't quite work. And just like comparing Spring Challenge paths, Dark Gift is something that I think probably looked kind of cool on paper, and it turned out to be even more fun in practice. The one problem that still kind of exists is it's still way too easy to do one-day runs. And I think probably last year and again this year, Jick said, like, yeah, there's too much turn gen in the game. We should scale back on turn gen. And still 2 out of the 3 Challenge Pass have softcore one-day runs, which are just a huge time sink.
I think that will change next year just because our half melanges and the resistos go out of standard.
Right.
Yes, though we did secretly get quite a lot of turn gen this year.
Yeah, we did get Cramco, which added quite a bit. Cramco, especially combined with Professor.
The Professor itself as well.
Yeah.
Like, if you need more turns, you could set up a thesis next year, because with the exoskeleton leaving, you can probably spare the familiar combat to get the experience that high.
That's a good springboard. Our favorite items of the month and the play that they promoted.
Well, definitely the 2 items that go together are the Pocket Professor and Cramco. That just across the board, it's a lot of turn gen. It's every single wandering monster that you throw into a delay zone is automatically going to be a turn saved. and then it's also giant stat gain. I would say after those, well, I haven't had much of a chance to use it yet, but the pizza box is a really cool idea. And I can't really say how good it is right now, but I'm looking forward to trying to optimize both the effects and the items that you get from it.
Shall I take over there?
Yes, please.
Because I actually have been using the pizza box for a bunch of my KOE runs. All in all, I found it to be a really flexible and really fun to play around with item, because you get to optimize your pizzas along like 4 different priorities, and you can very freely choose what you want to prioritize out of each individual pizza. You want to pick some sort of special reward, you want to pick a buff, you want to think about the duration of said buff, and you might actually care how many turns the pizza is giving you in the end. But you can very flexibly switch between those two. If you decide that right now you need a bit more turn then, and the buff is nice, but you don't really care what it is, but you can just not care about what word you're spelling, or you can decide to use that thing with a longer name but no auto self value at all, so you don't get as many turns, but maybe as many turns of the buff, but more turns from the eating it.
Come standard next year, I think we're all going to be passing around good combinations, and who knows, it might make us care about hitting a particular percentage of item drop when we're in a zone, because we need this item that starts with the correct letter.
Yeah, if somebody wants a fun project, they could like go through all the quest relevant zones and just track items that start with a certain letter, so they can so we could figure out how easy it is to get certain buffs. But that would take a lot of work. But if somebody wants to try it, go ahead.
And Crimbo has just been fun to use all year, and it eased the pain of losing Digitize, and actually had more fun working the Crimbo percentages than Digitize. Just a great time with it.
I also like the sort of surprise, like when you hit maybe around 60 or 70% odds of a Cramco Goblin showing up, and you think, well, I'll try to get one into a delay zone. Then that's kind of a nice little surprise when they show up a little bit earlier than you expect.
Oh yeah, usually I do the opposite, where I'm like, it's only 30%. I can wear the Kremko for a little item drop boost, and then I of course get a goblin.
Yeah, usually I will hit that elusive like 13th or 14th goblin when I'm not prepared and like trying to find a non-combat in the Friars. That's when I'll get every additional Cramco.
I do quite like Kremko and the Pocket Professor in general, though I'm not a big fan of the interaction between the two, for kind of the same reason I was not a big fan of the interaction between the Pillkeeper and the Exploding Battlefield. It puts a really high baseline value on those Professor copies, which makes it hard for other users to still stand out. Part of the fun of the Pocket Professor for me was that it was digitized, but in an entirely new way, letting you have lots of copies if you want them of all the monsters that you could possibly care about. Except with the way it interacts with the Kremko, you always have to think, is this actually better than just another goblin? Which does sadden me a little.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know if that will get better next year. We're going to lose. One of the strategies that developed at the end of the year was to wish for a ghost and then do a bunch of Professor copies, and that strategy will be gone next year. So just off the top of my head, like you basically have the Snowman Assassin, maybe the Cranny, Ghouls.
Maybe Modern Smobies.
Yeah, those could still be worth at least a turn. But there's not, trying to get a full like 10 copies per day off of the Professor is going to be, I'm afraid a lot of them are still just going to be Cramco Goblins. So, but who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe there'll be some new strategy that will emerge.
Mostly I'm sad that the Kremko is also 2019. It would have been nice if it was like 1 month earlier and it would leave a year earlier, and therefore letting us play with the Professor in a new way. But oh well, it happens. What else is there? The Saber, of course.
Saber's a lot of fun. Well, since we lose the wished ghost plus an Amarang into Professor, we'll probably be back to sabering bloopers.
Yeah, Saber's going to be kind of tricky to evaluate next year. I'm jumping ahead a little bit to, a preview of 2020 here, but we're going to lose our main source of yellow rays. and we lose a lot of banishes. So I think choosing what you use Saber on is going to be challenging. It's already a little tricky to figure out where you want to use those last few Saber forces.
Oh, I have been using them for banishes occasionally already, and
Next year, I'll be using more of the force drop items
right.
because of the lack of a disintegrate.
that is also a very good point, because item drops are also going to get hard.
Not to mention, a convenient 100-turn yellow ray source is gone.
Yes, we did get a new one, but not as easy to use.
Right.
Another fun thing this year was getting used to some of the nerfs that happened January 1st, learning how to do Copperhead and the progression of our mob of Zeppelin protesters and how we optimized it. I remember doing a run in February and the strategy wasn't really nailed down yet. I think I was heisting Leonard's. That used my free crafts and it wasn't great.
I made up like a little sleaze calculator, and I keep noticing there's stuff on it about how to get items from the monsters in the zones. And now I'm just like, wait, why were we doing that in the first place? That's really dumb. You should just sleaze. We did actually get a new source of clovers, so that's one of the reasons why it makes more sense.
The Rune Spoon for clovers, the Path for clovers, and also the Pill Keeper for semi-rares, which will also work. Oh, and the Pitch Cube for clovers. Damn, we got a lot of clovers.
Less sources of sleaze damage next year, but I think we'll still probably go that route.
Oh, we will, definitely.
Thanks to the pizza.
The Pizza Cube is actually really good at giving you buffs.
I just remember that at the beginning of the year, people really did not like being forced to do Copperhead, and I think in the long run that turned out to be, I think it's more enjoyable than Pirates.
Absolutely. Less swing.
The only thing that I liked about Pirates was the very beginning of the quest, because it turned out to be kind of a difficult optimization problem figuring out how to get the gear. But certainly nobody liked pirate insults, and I don't think people really cared that much about the other zones either. So I'm happy that
The rest of the pirates were just click nope, but the part that people did still like about the pirates was that you could start it before actually getting to level 11, which was handy for giving you something to do in those little droughts between the quests.
Well, and one of the reasons I think the pirates were missed at the very beginning was the abridged dictionary.
Oh yeah, that was also very much a thing.
With the bridge rework, like middle of February, I haven't actually missed the abridged dictionary. The joke is great. The Black House non-combat is great.
It's a really good way to make that zone a little less linear, yes.
And let's see, what else was changed? Oh, the writing desks. We actually get to go into the first floor.
that was a good change overall. I think some people get annoyed because you sometimes get bad RNG in billiards room, but other than that, having to actually make sure you can get 9, somewhere between 6 and 9 resistance for the kitchen that's kind of interesting. And
A source of booze early to boost your pool skill.
right.
And of course, getting our ink latte ingredient was very important this year. See, and then it was just the nun's trick.
That was probably an improvement overall, because it was kind of annoying having to get like the hippie outfit. So I'd say I'm generally glad that trick is gone.
I don't have strong feelings.
I think technically it's still possible if we ever get a striptease kind of skill.
How would you?
If we can figure out a way to empty an equipment slot mid-fight.
Yeah, I guess there'd be a way to do that. You never know. There are mechanics that I would not have predicted that would exist in 2020. It is sort of interesting. This is maybe getting us into our next section. I think in Crimbo 2019, there was like a something antler. Do you guys remember this?
That was 18, but yes.
Oh yeah, well 2018. That would banished beasts or made beasts less common or something.
A balanced antler.
Yeah, the balanced antler. Thanks, chat.
I need to go find out where I said this, because I distinctly recall saying, oh, it would be really cool if there was an item of the month that would allow you to track phylums. And it took a year, but Dev Team, they came out with it. The red nose snapper. So I got exactly what I wanted for Crimbo. It was just took a year to get it.
It was a couple of days late because, as it turned out during testing, doing just that is not really enough to make an item of the month actually look good or anything. Because there are just not enough zones where the phylums are mixed that you care about.
It was originally just the phylum tracking then? That was all it was?
It was phylum tracking and phylum banishing, which is still showcased in the haiku. You could banish a phylum, and then later on, after doing that for 11 thingies, you got an item that lets you banish the entire phylum for a little while.
Oh,
which was a neat idea, but it just made the item of the month do the same thing like 3 times. And it wasn't very helpful in most of the zones.
I'm glad the banish got changed to a free run banish instead of costing a turn. That was a nice improvement mid-month for the red nose snapper.
Adamus was arguing for it for a little while, and actually I was actually arguing against it. But after the other run or two, I did notice that I wasn't really using the snapper all that much. Also because a lot of the other drops also don't have much Ascension relevance. So I figured, yeah, sure, boost that one a little to give the item some more Ascension relevance as a whole.
It is a little interesting to see what they tag spleen usage on.
Because some of the weaker ones like the MP and HP ones, don't those take spleen or something, which are, I don't know, I guess if you're brand new to the game are nice, but yeah, they're pretty much pointless to anybody that has a lot of skills.
Yes, I think those are spleen because they're percentage buffs. HP and MP percentage buffs tend to be valued kind of highly by hot stuff. And yeah, I can agree with you that I'm not entirely sure why.
Yeah, chat brings out that the snapper did make farming those Crimbo rares more interesting this month.
Yes.
Due to the way the zones were designed.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was intentional. Showcase the item of the month a little more. It also did a really good job of informing people how banishing works when you have a monster sniffed or something. So many bug reports of people that were tracking a monster and then banishing it and then wondering why their banish didn't work.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, Sawyer, do you want to explain how banishing a monster you have a copy of in the zone works?
I think this is true for almost anything that copies. So this would be true for the red nose snapper. It would be true for olfaction. I believe it's true for Galapagos, turtle sniff, whatever that's called. Ordinarily, when you are in a regular zone and you already have a monster tracked and you banish that monster, the only monster that gets banished is the original copy. So, for example, if you're doing the dairy goats, and if for some reason, like an idiot, you track the saber-tooth goat, and then let's say you olfact the saber-tooth goat, and then you banish it, there's still going to be 3 copies of saber-tooth goats in there. Or the banish only gets rid of that original copy. So this is actually very useful in spading, because you can mess around with the number of copies that are in the zone, basically remove an original copy, and that it makes it just a lot easier to see how many copies remain. And I think I did it, I should remember, and I think Dictator suggested how to do it. This is kind of how we figured out that the red nose snapper generates 2 copies of whatever phylum it is tracking. It generates 2 copies of that monster in the zone.
To add to that, any single banish will get rid of all the original copies in the zone, but none of the additional ones, and banishing the monster more times won't get rid of any additional copies either.
Yeah, that's a good point.
With a couple of weird hard-coded exceptions, there are some monsters that get banished by specific item interactions or specific non-combats. In that case, the banish is usually not a banish, but this monster no longer exists in the zone now, in which case it will also get rid of all the copies because the monster no longer exists. So we're not adding more copies either.
I was going to ask about is it the airship that has 2 of the little, whatever they're called, Hershey Kisses guys? A series of...
Eyesores?
Yeah, if you banish one of those...
Both are gone.
Okay, both are actually gone. I can never remember if that works, because I always debate whether or not to banish those, since they have the SGEAs.
A single banish will get rid of both the originals, and the same is true in, for example, the
Hole in the Sky with the Astronomer.
Okay.
For an example of the really weird banishes, I noticed it when I was testing all these attraction abilities in the Fuckle, and the Chatterboxing choice and the Cocktail Napkin, if people still remember those, specifically banish specific monsters in there. And there it would get rid of all the copies of the monster along the way. They just did no longer exist. And the same is true if you, for example, try to sniff the skin flute in an Ascension when you have a camel toe or vice versa. It won't make copies of that monster show up either, because they're not there in the first place.
Makes sense.
Let's talk a little bit about how to actually use the red nose snapper familiar in run. So I've had a chance to do, I think, 2 runs where I got to use the snapper. The general consensus is that he's really good at tracking dudes. The best zone to do that in is the palindome. The dudes also have the best, what I would say is the best drop. They have a banisher that originally cost a turn to use, but now you get 3 free turns of that per day, or 3 free uses of the banisher. You definitely want to try to get several of those in run. Do you guys see other item drops that would be worth pursuing in run from the snapper? I guess we haven't mentioned, to get the item drops you have to spend 11 turns fighting whatever phylum you're tracking.
The boiler room, it's worth like what, half a turn?
The boiler room, I done the math on that because you can actually figure that out exactly. I think all of definitely the boiler room and the other 2 basement Spooky Raven zones, it should save somewhere around half a turn. It would be constructs that you want to track there, I think.
Yeah, I think that's constructs, and that gives you the initiative, which is pretty nice, though it costs a spleen, which is a thing that you have to keep in mind.
We've had that option before, I think, with the Witch's Pawns.
I actually did fight one of those in my serious standard runs in that year.
I've done them before. Isn't the spleen one, the current one, 150% initiative?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's high enough that might actually be worth doing. The trick to that, though, is that you would actually have to find 11 constructs in a row in a run.
Not in a row, but not with other phylums you want to track in between.
Oh, yeah. I guess I should, not in a row, but without being interrupted by, say, trying to track dudes or something. I'll just share on the podcast chat a spreadsheet. I did try to kind of map out where various phyla are in an Ascension. Again, there's a huge optimization problem here of like how you would get the maximum number of snapper drops. Like you could definitely use it for all 3 of the haunted basement zones. That would be 3, or actually probably might be 4 or 5 constructs, because you might have to fight the fulminate guys twice.
So one of them isn't a construct, so that part doesn't help. Snapper in chat, the cabinet is undead.
Oh, okay, the cabinet's undead. So you could get maybe 2 wine racks and a monstrous boiler. That would be 3 constructs. If you did Spooky Raven all at once, you could start with the library and then work your way all the way to there. But that's kind of a bad idea.
Especially because then we get back to the previous point about banishers. In the library, you probably want to banish the library has both writing desks and book beds. And if you want to banish the book beds, you can't be tracking constructs, because then your banish won't actually work all that well.
Yeah, right.
I noticed the same when I was trying to evaluate how many dudes you can fight in run, because there's lots of dudes in the hidden city, but you kind of don't want to be snapper tracking those, because then the ones that you don't want to fight you can't actually banish anymore.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a challenge figuring out how to actually use a snapper in run. The 2 things that I would say for sure, the 2 things that I figured out, is definitely want to use it in palindome. It is on average, it's going to probably save you at least around a banish in palindome by tracking dudes. That will give you 5 out of 11 dude fights right there. So as long as you chain palindome with another zone that has dudes in it, you can get at least one of the human musk, which is the banisher. And probably use it in Never-Ending Party as well, because those are also dudes. Or won't make much of a difference for doing the party itself, but you could easily get 9 or 10 fights on dudes from that every day.
And you won't feel as bad about not using a leprechaun like the kitten burglars, since Asden is going out of standard, meat becomes a little less of a priority.
We'll see how people actually figure out how to use the snapper and run. There may be some surprises.
There's going to be a lot of adjustments going into next year. I will end up wanting more banishes than we currently think we need, because Macrometeorite helps with all those 3 monster zones.
Yeah, we're going to lose a lot of banishes.
Especially with cases where we only need to find like 1 or 2 copies of the monster, because then banishes are not very worth it. But Macrometeorite is very helpful, which is actually another good place to use the snapper. Beasts in the Whitey's Grove.
Oh, that's right. The other thing I wanted to mention, I have not had a chance to do this, but Anomus has been hard at work on doing a little Python simulator of various zones. I think people started doing this back in Dark Gift, actually. Animus and a couple other players tried simulating certain zones in Python, but he sort of ran through how to simulate Palindome, and we were just trying to figure out exactly how much the snapper was worth there.
I will make sure and add a link to the Python sim in the show notes.
Okay. If you're good at Python or you just want to learn how to build a little simulator for Kingdom of Loathing, you can definitely just download that Python script that he has there and start messing around with it. I used it to, well, he and I together sort of used it to simulate a couple different situations to basically see how good the snapper was in Palindome, how good the olfaction itself was, how much changing non-combats affects the zone. So it's kind of nice to put some hard numbers on how good you think things are.
I actually had that case in one of my last runs, where I actually found 5 bobs before I found 3 non-combats. In fact, I only found 1 so far, which was kind of annoying.
I've had that happen before, and I was always curious. That actually is a problem that you can figure out how likely it is without simulating it, I think.
It's also a problem that actually gets worse with the snapper.
Yeah, you're likely to get all 5 dudes before getting all 3 non-combats, so...
Because you're not re-rolling the non-combats with the banish, correct?
Yeah.
I would definitely recommend people check that out. And I think Ain suggested trying to do it for Whitey's next. I just haven't gotten around to it.
Yeah, that was supposed to be my homework, and I also haven't done it. It's on the list.
Yeah, same here. It saves, I remember trying to just do it with mental math, figuring out about what it would save. I think it probably saves close, the red nose snapper saves close to a turn, or somewhere between like half a turn and a turn, by tracking beasts.
I think that just leads to the next part of our discussion, unique mechanics that we're going to miss once we start our next standard year. It's simple, but I really love the exoskeleton, I call it hug pocket, but the hugs and kisses skill. It's so useful, and I often find myself using all, I think, 11 per day.
I thought there was 10. There's 11? Someone says 11. Who's that, Tess?
Good.
Good to know. I've been missing...
I use whatever chit says on the left.
Oh, yeah, I guess it'll tell you. That is a really interesting mechanic. A couple areas in the game where you pretty much use that every time, like the filth worms. There's areas where you almost always want to use it, like trying to get a killing jar or something. Exoskeleton has been around a little over 2 years, and I'm still finding spots where I realize, oh, I should have used an exo hug there.
And our possibilities opened up with the saber. We got to do fun things like hug pocketing the item and then using the saber to drop all the items again.
Oh, right.
Even the pizza cube switched the exoskeleton use a little because of star pizzas.
Oh, if you came up short, if you came up within, 2 stars of getting your key, then you could do 1 star pizza and 1 hug? Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, that sort of thing. Or vice versa. Try to hug pocket lines out of the guy that has all lines and then saber force him to show 2 more friends to ensure that you get a lot of lines without many stars. So you can make better use of those pizzas.
Pizzas only make stars, right?
Yes.
I never thought about doing it that way.
Looking ahead to next year, we're going to be losing a lot of item, as we previously mentioned, and also a lot of our monster level sources.
Yeah, you may want to put this in the show notes as well. I tried to update my item calculator, just looking at all the stuff we lost we're going to lose from 2019. We lose about 150% of just like common sources of plus item drops. There's 50% from Aston Martin, 50% from the XO potion, 30% from Stench Jelly, 15% from Mumming Trunk. And I forgot about this at first, but there's actually a 10% passive item drop from Spacegate that I assume we'll lose.
And the Spacegate Disintegrate.
Yeah, and Disintegrate. And we lose Aston Missile Launcher. And we lose the Exo Hugs. And we lose KGB, which would sometimes give you 50%.
And don't forget the affirmation.
Several of the classes got Always Be Collecting, and there's Robot Boost, so there's a lot of somewhere between probably 300, 400% that you could get in a run that will not be available anymore. So it's going to be a challenge.
Will not be doubled either.
Yeah, that's what all the stuff I'm saying is just with those effects themselves. With Champagne, all of those effects could be doubled. So basically, all of the situations right now with 10% item drop monsters, you can usually cap them without too much trouble, but I think almost all of those are now going to be things that you really have to plan ahead if you want to cap them. So I'm curious how many yellow rays we're going to have to use from the saber or from the pill keeper.
I'm curious how many Pocket Professor Mass lectures people are going to be using.
Oh, that's right. That may actually become relevant.
Although it does feel a little less effective if your base item drop is low enough. I don't know. I'll have to play around.
I already forget what the optimal.
I think it was like just the square root of 1/3 as a base drop rate or as a boosted drop rate.
Yeah, something like that.
It's bad for items where you want to guarantee you get the drop because it won't guarantee anything for you. But it could be pretty handy in places like the airship where you're gonna fight probably 10 healers that you're fighting and you only need one amulet.
Yeah, I'll have to see if that would actually be worth trying to get items that way.
Healer and the sidekick, are they both dudes?
They're both dudes. That is a good point, actually. Though there are a bunch more dudes in the zone.
So airship, the burly sidekick, the protagonist, the healer, and the spunky princess are dudes. So that's 4 dudes. The mech is a construct. The irritating series of encounters is a beast. That's actually a tricky question as to whether you'd want to use the snapper there. That's a tough question for next year of how guaranteed that you're going to get both the amulet and the mohawk wig.
We'll definitely have some familiar turns opened up with the Exo rotating out.
We have a lot of familiar freedom, really.
Just gained like 197 plus familiar combats.
99, I think.
I was trying to calculate like how many turns of familiar use you have, and we're definitely going to get into depending on what comes out next year, you can like get into the 80 turn cat heist right now probably, and that still might be worthwhile, but we'll see.
You could actually use those to guarantee those item drops that you missed on as well, if you do want to.
Yeah, definitely using cat heist for stuff that like right now you would cap, but maybe next year you can't cap it, and you might actually have to use cat heist for something like that, whereas right now I frequently heist like bowling balls or something.
Right now they're frequently just, I want to copy this thing, but I kind of don't have copies.
I think we'll definitely have to check back in next year and talk about familiar usage and pizza buffs.
Yeah, that's going to be fun.
The other big change is that we're going to lose the genie.
Yes, so we do get the pizza cube.
But that is going to take out a couple like the whole mountain man thing. That's gone. So basically you're now, I assume we're going to do 3 clovers to get the ores.
Yes. I was hoping for other options, like maybe some free craft skill, like the one that we got from I think it's Volcano? We had a free mining skill a while back.
That could still happen.
With the pizza cube, we get plenty of clover, so I think that even if we get a free mining skill, it might not be worth using it, because it does mean that you have to spend effort getting outfit, while just clovering your way through is guaranteed.
That'd be a cool new item of the month. Would be just some, like a charter zone that would just be a huge mine that you could mine in for free or something, and get ores or get other items. I think that'd be kind of a cool item of the month.
Like the beach, but underground.
Yeah.
I guess.
So what else goes out with Genie, though? I guess you can't do Ghost or other sources of white pixels. Green Ops, you're going to have to rely on RNG to get Green Ops, although with low item drops, the whole Green Ops thing may not really even be that important.
The Green Ops route was very much a product of excess item drop.
Right, and Genie kind of smoothed over the wrinkles and challenge paths. Standard, the wishes were more open.
Yeah, true.
Any last thoughts, Sawyer or Dictator?
Is there any like specific ideas that you guys would have for familiars or something that you'd like to see next year? That's just the thing that's on my mind. I'm just looking at how much, we really only have 3 item of the month familiars right now: Cat, Burglar, Snapper, and Professor. So there's a lot of room for familiars. I'm trying to think if there would be any specific new mechanics I would like to see.
Actually, it might be worth running the garbage fire a bit next year.
I don't remember what the drops are for. I remember there's the +5 adventure back thing, because I would sometimes get that just to waste turns in a run.
Initiative and offhand for +10 weight. I was getting the initiative during my Kingdom of Exploding runs.
The initiative is decent, the familiar rate is decent. Stench or hot resistance might be useful for the haunted kitchen.
Oh yeah, I haven't even looked at. Do we lose any sources of hot or stench resistance? Well, there's drive, whatever the resistance one is, but I don't think I usually would not use that for the kitchen.
I was using the pentagram actually.
Oh yeah, I would do that too. I would actually throw stench or hot on the pentagram. So
I think the beach buffs will smooth over most of that.
you could also just simply, if you have a lot of familiar turns, you could just throw in the parrot or mew if it's just 7 turns in there.
Oh, true. The beach buffs are good, but also a little awkward because you might want to keep those for when you're doing the tavern, because you can only get them once per day.
I will make a prediction right now. I do not see anybody doing 1 day soft course standard runs. Maybe a challenge path, but I highly doubt anybody will do a 1 day run in standard next year. We're going to lose a lot of turn gen, and you would have to have some pretty serious power creep in items of the month for that to happen again.
We need a remake of like those Space Gate half melanges in an item of the month or something to get somewhere.
Right.
Something like that might do it.
Lyft, were you or Dictator going to do, did you say you might try to do a standard run in the next 2 days?
I'm going to try, time permitting. I only have 2 days left.
It's currently the 28th, and I mentioned earlier that the 31st is Dia de Borrachos, so unless you want to suck up 10 lost turns from Wanderers or something, really tomorrow and Monday would be the best days to try to squeeze in your last standard run.
I am hoping to start a run, and then I will probably start another one after that anyway, because I still have not actually completed my hardcore standard equipment set for the year. Kind of should get to that.
Hey, you still got plenty of time. Don't worry about
I literally don't have plenty of time, but
it.
might just do a whole lot of standard runs next year and then backcraft some. Wouldn't be the first time.
Well, thank you very much, Sawyer and Dictator, for taking some time to do a 2019 wrap-up.
Yeah, it's good. I'm glad we got to do this wrap-up, and should be interesting to see what happens in 2020.
Yep, looking forward to it. Thank you all for listening. We're going to move over to /hardcore.